All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Today, we're going to be breaking down the core plays for the RBC Heritage. Also going over just the lineup process for this week as well. It's a pretty unique week with the pricing that we have. Let's go ahead and get into it. So guys, the pricing is out here, and so we are going to see that Scheffler is priced at $13K, which is probably the correct price because we know what the typical strategy is for a no-cut event like the RBC Heritage. That is to go with a studs and duds approach. Okay, and that is just to maximize really the floor that we are getting. We can target the top end golfers that we know are going to finish top 10, top 5, like Scheffler. And so that's already baked in there a little bit. And because of the pricing that we have as well, and because we know we are going to get 4 rounds on these golfers, typically speaking, the best route to go in terms of making a profitable lineup is going with a player that is, below 7K. Those players that are going to finish one at least exceeding their price tag, okay, in terms of value. So basically with Matt Kuchar, Brian Campbell, Nick Dunlap, and Adam Hadwin, will they finish bottom 4 in the field? Yes or no? And so if the question is no, let's say Matt Kuchar is someone that I actually like a decent amount this week, given his pricing. He's someone that I think will be on. I'll touch on that in a second. The second option from that point is to be targeting, and this is a little bit more crucial, the golfers are able to finish in the top 50% of the field. Again, those golfers that are, lower than 7K that allow you then to fit in the studs like Scotty, for example. Now, this week is a little bit more unique, just given the sense that we are getting plenty of golfers that could pop in the middle range, in that mid-tier range. Sungjae is someone that has been showing some spotty form, but also has tremendous course history here. Daniel Berger is someone I think could be in the mix and is, looking like a good value here as well. Just an FYI, guys, we are still pulling in the Masters betting odds and whatnot as well, which does slightly change the overall rank. So we are going to be referring to the 9-to-5 rank, which doesn't include that. So the overall rank is just factoring a little bit more data points like Vegas odds and whatnot. So again, that's still pulling in Masters data just as an FYI. Typically speaking, it does update around 1 or 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, just as an FYI. I'm recording this video a little bit before that. All in all, that's not going to play a big difference in terms of who we are targeting, especially given the lineup process. But like we have Denny McCarthy, who's at a good price. I feel comfortable getting to him. The issue with these golfers is that if they do not really exceed their price tag, then we're just better off going with a 6K player because the point differential is typically not as much. Golfers are still going to score, maybe a 10-point difference between a 7K play and a 6K play doesn't really matter much when you're able to target Scheffler, who's more likely to finish in the top 5 than, let's say, someone like Tommy Fleetwood, who obviously pricing difference. You guys get the point there. And so core play number 1 for me is going to be Scheffler. I know he's the highest priced player on the slate. I know that's just an easy pick. It's not really a cop-out, and I'll touch on why in just a second. But Scheffler is a player that I do think we can rely on. Okay, he has had a little bit of a disappointing season, I would say somewhat, especially for DFS purposes, given his salary. So Masters, Houston, Farmers, and arguably the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, he paid off his price tag. Okay, API, somewhat like that didn't hurt you, but it didn't help you. Okay, at the Waste Management Phoenix Open and at the Players Championship, that did not help you at all if you played him. Okay, so he's not as much of a lock and load as he has been in previous years to absolutely pay off his price tag. But in terms of like other golfers, he certainly is. And you got to remember, at the start of the season, he did start the season a little bit banged up with a little hand injury, which maybe did change his play a little bit here and there on some shots. And if we look at the course history, it has been solid. So he's played here twice, 1 last year and then 10th the year before that. He is going to be the 3rd best staff in the field. And so key stats that we're looking at, birdie to bogey ratio. Okay, this is a course that you really can't be making sloppy bogeys on. And it's not exactly a scoring fest. So we are looking at birdie to bogey ratio. It is a second shot golf course. Stroke gain approach and good drive percentage are absolutely key. Basically, we want to be targeting golfers that are boring, smart golfers. Those are the ones that tend to play well here. Scotty obviously is that type of player. He's typically not risking too much. And then par 4 scoring is something we're looking at as well. So he does pop there, 3rd best in the field, best specialist. So really just an easy click, I would say, given the typical lineup approach that we go with on this week. And so, yes, we are just clicking in Scotty into that. Then from there, guys, it does get a little bit more difficult, especially data-wise, okay? I would say Collin Morikawa is certainly the safest and easiest click after that in terms of, reliable options that we can kind of trust what we're going to get out of them. But then from there, it does get a little bit more sticky. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the data. And what I mean by that, it's like really any way you slice it in terms of Aberg, he's probably not going to pop too much for you. Maybe specialist data, he is popping up 7th best in the field. Course history-wise, love the 10th place finish out of him last year. But it's really the recent form that also changes the stat fit data. That's also going to be the same for someone like Xander Schauffele as well. Which, as you guys hopefully know, the 9-to-5 data is set up to capture both safety and upside. So 2 players that, for whatever reasons, have had a little bit of bad form, especially considering their price tag. We have to decide, as people that are, reading the data, whether or not we can kind of write off those data points. So, for example, for Xander Schauffele, I think we can fully. And actually, I think he's a great outright bet. He's one of my favorite outright bets this week. I just think things are setting up for his game for him to win. And the reason why I think we can kind of write off some of the poor data points that we have coming in from him is simply because he had a withdrawal from some events because he was citing an injury. Okay. And we did see that a little bit in his form where, even at the Zozo Championship, 40th Century Tournament Champions, 30th, API 40th, and then Players Championship 72nd, like he was still able to make the cuts in those events, which is honestly probably like his like D game, and he was still able to make the cut. Whereas at the Valspar Championship, it did seem like he figured out, well, really it was at the TGL. He hit some really nice shots. They're like, okay, it seems like he's back. Valspar Championship finished 12th. And then last week, guys, had a 10th place finish at the Masters. Probably one of the most quiet top 10 finishes I can remember out of a 2-time major champion. I mean, just insane. Arguably, I don't know if I can say this now, the 3rd best golfer in the world. I was going to say 2nd best, but I think Rory, win the Players, win the Masters. Could argue Rory's the best player in the world right now. But being the 3rd best player in the world was kind of crazy there for him not to get hype. And he does have really good course history here as well. 18th place finish last year. Not the best, I would say, but 3rd place finish 2 years ago. Love that there from him. Again, he's not going to be the best stat fit in the field because of the data points that we have coming in from this season where he hadn't played all too well. But he is the 2nd best specialist in the field. And again, what we're looking at specialist data-wise is pulling in all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament and comparing that again. So he does really pop up through and through with all those data points that we have there as well. And then we look at someone like Aberg, who does feel like it's such a weird pricing for him. And I kind of hate how they priced him last week at the Masters as well. It somewhat worked out for him with him having that 7th place finish. But given the form that he has shown, it really seems strange. Like we have safer and more reliable options. Maybe they don't have as much upside as he does. And maybe, honestly, he's just not as mentally into some events as you would think, but he did suck at the Players' Championship. Like 97th there is pretty terrible, and that is an event that you would be mentally geared to play. The Valero Texas Open, I could see him really not caring all too much mentally about that event and like just wanting to get reps in to prepare for the Masters tournament. I can write that one off. It's the fact that he missed 2 straight cuts in a row. It's the fact that he did play kind of poorly at the Farmers Insurance Open and then withdrew at the AT&T Pebble Beach Prom. Like, I get that as well. Like, that's fine. But he did win at the Farmers Insurance Open, okay, which we do have to factor in as well. And he is the 7th best specialist in the field. But it's kind of easy to see why, data-wise, why he wouldn't be popping up too much. And so with those 2 golfers, you just have to ask yourself whether or not those were anomalies in the data. And so for Xander, I think we can clearly write that off because he does seem back from that injury. Whereas Aberg, I think it's just like a mental thing with him where maybe he's just not as geared up to play. He seems a little bit too lackadaisical. He reminds me a little bit of Matt Kuchar. I don't know. Just he does in his attitude. Where it's like, oh, it's not going well. Oh, well. I don't know. That's just my interpretation of him. But it does feel a little bit too high priced. But again, that's going to be up for you guys. And so for me, core play wise, I know that was a big long weave there to get into this, but that is to me where like Collin Morikawa is actually the best option though. And again, the 9-to-5 data is already capturing that, where he does have both safety and upside with all the data points that we have coming in. So last week, honestly, a pretty disappointing finish, but still not terrible. Like he finished 14th at the Masters. We'll still take that. 10th at the Players. Again, pretty solid. API, he finished 2nd. Farmers, 17th. AT&T Pebble Beach Prom, 17th. And then Century Tournament Champions, 2nd. So he has been top 17 or better in every single start thus far this season, which again, given the fact that this is a no-cut event, we want more than that. We need to be securing a top 10 finish. But if you're telling me that between Scotty and between Collin Morikawa, we're arguably going to get two top 15 place finishes locked in, I'm kind of okay with that. Now, the issue becomes with Scotty's price tag, we could theoretically just go Xander, Collin Morikawa, and then take a bet on one of the other golfers that are good enough plays to fill in there. That's kind of the issue that we have this week because, again, Scotty should be a lock and load to finish at least top 5, top 10 this week for sure. And Collin Morikawa, just on paper, is great, guys. So he's played this course 3 times, okay? 10th place finish at this tournament last year was his best finish, but he is a great staff it again. Actually, the best staff in the field, 4th best specialist, really just coming in and checking on the boxes. He is simply put due for a win. Okay, you keep playing good golf, eventually you're going to win. Ask Rory. Kept putting himself in spots to win at majors. Although he tried to choke it away on the putting green, Rory had such an interesting tournament, guys. Like, he hit probably the most clutch shots I can remember a golfer hitting. Honestly, that par 5 shot around the trees and then putting it within 8 feet and then missing he was not clutch with his putter. It was just such an interesting tournament there. But again, you keep putting yourself into good spots to win. I do think that'll eventually happen. So I do really like Collin Morikawa to win this week. And because of that, I also think he's going to be a player that we want to be going out of our way to target lineup-wise. And so if we go Collin Morikawa and Scotty Scheffler, you're going to notice that we only have 6.5 left over. Okay, now let's say we wanted to go with, Collin Morikawa and Xander. We have a decent amount more. But regardless, I still think that the next best option is actually going to be just to scroll down to the bottom and probably just go with Matt Kuchar and maybe even Brian Campbell. I mentioned that the golfers that typically play well at this event are golfers that just play boring golf. Smart, safe shots, set yourself up for some birdie attempts, and you should be able to play well. I do think that there's a good chance that Matt Kuchar is able to finish top 50% in the field. Okay, Brian Campbell, maybe not that much, but I do think Brian Campbell will be able to finish above his price tag. Now, data-wise, guys, Matt Kuchar does really pop, especially considering his price tag, okay, especially considering the amount of players in the field. So he does have good course history here, 19th, 13th, and 18th. If we get a top 20 finish out of Matt Kuchar, that would be awesome, okay? We would take that for sure. If you look at his recent form, it has been good enough, okay? He is playing well enough. Valspar Championship miscut, RSM Classic miscut, a little bit of worry there, but he has a bunch of made cuts mixed in there as well. And again, given the fact that this is a course where you just need to play smart golf, he's a play that to me makes a lot of sense at 6K. We don't need much out of him for him to be able to pay off his value. Really, the best part about Matt Kuchar is his price and his ability to most likely pay off that price tag. And so to me, guys, Matt Kuchar is a pretty simple click, especially if you are going Scotty and especially if you are going Collin Morikawa. Now, after that, it does get a little bit interesting. I don't mind Brian Campbell. The fact that he finished 32nd at the Masters in his first start there is pretty darn impressive. Now, the Masters is somewhat of a course where you do need to be playing smart golf, obviously, think out your shots. And that's what we have this week as well at the RBC Heritage. It's not exactly a tough scoring event like the Valspar Championship or like the Players Championship or like the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Those are all events in which, watching his win at the Mexico Open, you wouldn't really expect him to play well at. Whereas this week is much more of a course where, just naturally speaking, you would expect him to play well. Now, he's not going to pop up data-wise as a good play. He's just not. Okay, this is one of those ones where you need to look past the data and just go based off of what we are presented DFS-wise as what are going to be the good strategies. And he is someone that pops up in there. He's not exactly a core play, but he is a player that I want to call it to you guys. Now, a play that I want to call it as well, a player that I do think is going to be more of a core play is Ryan Gerard, where if you look at his form, it has been pretty solid. We have captured a lot of upside with him. One missed cut at the Puerto Rico Open. I mentioned Bud Cauley on my kind of first preview video. That Puerto Rico Open, in retrospect, is easily one of the most tilting events of the whole freaking season. That should have been a massive week. There's two players that really were disappointing, Ryan Gerard and Bud Cauley. Okay. Basically, everyone else did better or just as good as they were expected to play. If the two players that A, were expected to play well, did, and B, have played well since then, did, it would have been a massive week. That's still tilting there because we have seen him have a second place finish at the Valero and a ninth place finish at the Houston. Now, maybe you're just oh, he's a Texas golfer. Maybe that's something to write in your notes. Ryan Gerard in Texas events, 2 top 10 finishes. We like that. But regardless, the form is pretty solid. To get a golfer at 6.6 in top 25 form in the field is pretty darn good. And he's also the 14th best stat in the field as well. Key stat-wise, there's really nothing to be too concerned with. 30th in birdie to bogey ratio. Again, considering the price tag, we'll take that. And then top 20 basically in strokes gained approach, good drive percentage, and par 5 scoring. So through and through, at his price tag, he is certainly someone I want to be clicking on as well. Now, I will say with him, I am kind of cherry picking a little bit because the same reasons as to why I like Ryan Gerard as a play, You could somewhat argue for someone like Hesitune, where he has 2 top 5 finishes over his past 3 starts and has made 3 straight cuts in a row as well. That could certainly be a reason to target him. You look at someone like Eric Cole, he's been playing better golf as of recent as well. 3 straight top 25 finishes or better. Missed the cut at the Players Championship, but since then has been playing some good golf. Again, like there's other players in this range that you could certainly be on, and I'll be on as well. And I hate to say it, guys, after he was a big disappointment, but the player that I don't mind as well is actually Lucas Glover. Now, Lucas Glover was arguably Russell Henley's bogey on 18 was the biggest disappointment. But Lucas Glover with that 78 to start, and really just the thing with Lucas Glover is when he is looking like a great play, when he seems to be rounding into the great form, are the weeks in which you shouldn't trust him, is seemingly the case. I am literally like 0 for 3 in terms of being the most overweight on Lucas Glover and him not paying off. Okay, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, 3rd. American Express miscut 21st, 30th, 42nd. And so it just seems like he isn't able to carry this form. Miscut at the Genesis or at the Coniston Classic. Then he followed that up with a 32nd, 3rd, and 8th. So maybe it's just someone that we can't, when he's looking like a really good option considering his price tag, we can't trust him. But again, looking at golfers that are going to be good, safe, reliable, kind of typically safe and reliable golfers in terms of their golf game, Lucas Glover is someone that does make sense to me. But guys, let's go ahead and try to close out this first look build for you. And let's just say we do go Brian Campbell here. Then we can afford to pay up for a little bit of golfers here. Like it does get a little bit tough there. If I could get to Bud Colley there, I think I'd be more happy to do that. But like Harris English, I'm fine with. Probably just end up on Harris English. That's kind of the constraints that we have this week, is that I am still closing out my builds with not exactly great plays. Now, if we try to go more in fair and balanced, I'll show you guys this. Like we go Xander, then we have 10K left over. Patrick Cantlay is certainly a good click. Corey Connors is certainly a good click. Russell Henley. I think if there was a no-cut event last week, guys, Russell Henley still probably finishes in the top 20. I really do. You look at the weekend that like John Rahm had, I think Henley probably does the exact same thing. Missed it on the number, made a bogey on 18. And so that's just kind of it. The issue that I have with this range between JT, Connors, Henley, you could argue Shane Lowry, and Patrick Cantlay tossing in there. You could even toss in, let's say, Xander Morikawa. I think Xander and Morikawa are the easier clicks there, but you could make a strong argument for all of those plays as to why they're better than one another. I think they're pretty interchangeable. And so if you end up on the wrong side of one of those golfers, that's going to be pretty darn unfortunate. Now, I will say, if I am doing something more of a fair and balanced approach, I might go a little bit too safe and go Connors, Henley, Cantlay, Gerard, Kuchar, and then probably go Danny McCarthy, who also seems like a safe play as well. But that's enough of kind of what I'm looking at. Let's go ahead and see what the 9 to 5 data is thinking is going to be a good lineup approach as well. All right, so we go ahead and jump on into it. And so just going to give the model 2 data points, or the lineup builder 2 data points to go off of. And we're just going to click generate just to see kind of what the lineup approaches that the data is liking. And so here we go. A play that I didn't mention that I do really like is Daniel Berger. I did mention him, I think, actually. Is Daniel Berger, which in a normal week, I think I'd be firing off Daniel Berger. If this was a full cut event and we were getting Daniel Berger at 8.3, I would love that. I would love Danny McCarthy as well. An interesting play is Brian Harman. But what are we noticing, guys? The data is somewhat agreeing with the studs and duds approach. So we are getting Scotty and we are getting Matt Kuchar. The thing that I like about that data-wise, that's telling me that we're not going to have to like finagle, if you guys are trying to do a studs and duds approach, we're not going to have to finagle the data too much there. Like we are seeing here, if we scroll down a little bit, Nick Taylor, Matt Kuchar, Scotty, Sungjae Im. Sungjae Im is interesting there. We are seeing Ryan Gerard, Matt Kuchar. This is very similar to the lineup I just gave you guys. But again, kind of looking at this, betting on Sungjae Im and also Brian Harman to outproduce, let's say, Xander or Collin Morikawa and whoever the other golfer is, I just don't think is likely, because we are chasing those placement points DFS-wise, and that's what I like a little bit more. But it is nice to see that the data is mostly agreeing with a lineup approach that I'm kind of already showed you guys. Here's another one. Matt Kuchar, Nick Taylor, Gerard, McCarthy, Cantlay, Scotty Scheffler. Pretty interchangeable of what I showed you guys earlier. So I do like that aspect. Now, I will say this could end up being a week in which you maybe try to do a little bit of the custom model. I typically tell people not to do this. I tend to think people, when they make their own custom models, they're typically not looking at exactly what they should be looking at, and they're having fun with the custom model data rather than putting the best foot forward in terms of what's going to, one, lead them to a good week that week, but just in the long term, what's going to yield, a good profitable approach in the long term. And I just don't see that from people, typically speaking. So if it's like a yes or no answer to whether or not people should be doing their own custom models, I would typically say no. And I know that goes against really kind of the standard of the industry. Everyone's making their own custom model, but I think that's where people tend to kind of make their mistakes. But that being said, I do think that this could be a week in which we do that. You could do something like studs and duds only, which what we're looking at there is it's going to be golfers that are, as you'll see, priced the highest and also priced the lowest. It's scaling it based off of that. And it is still basing off of golfers that are projected to play well as well. So like, for example, because Xander, again, looking at the data, he's not going to pop too much wise. And same thing with Aberg. If you like those two plays, you would have to go in and adjust that. So you could just export this data here and then upload it into the lineup builder to do it that way if you guys choose to do so. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate everyone watching this. Give a like and subscribe. If you guys would like access to any of the 9 to 5 data for fantasy golf or PrizePicks and Underdog prop betting, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the tools available on the website for just $10 a month, guys. I priced it that way for you guys. Take advantage of that. It's the best deal out there for fantasy golf and PrizePicks and Underdog prop betting as well. Thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.